Gospel Countdown.
Boston Praise Radio and TV network of 30 radio, TV, social media, and internet stations. You can broadcast on our network by just giving me a call, 617-282-0685, 617-282-0685.
Good morning. Welcome to Boston Black News. I'm Ron Bell, your host. It is really exciting to be here on this Friday, April 28th. It is sunshine, but it's going to rain this weekend. But that's all right. But we're really excited. We have our state senator, Liz Miranda, here this morning. We're really excited for her in her first 100 days plus so that we can talk a little bit about what's going on in our city, throughout the district. It's the Fifth Suffolk. Second Suffolk.
Yeah.
Because you was Fifth Suffolk when you were state rep.
Yes.
So it's all these Suffolks. Okay. Now with the redistricting and all that, it's like really confusing.
And people are still having a hard time.
Yeah. Because, do you know there's a special election Tuesday?
Yes.
May 2nd. John Santiago, former state representative John Santiago, was just promoted to
Veterans Secretary.
Secretaries of Veteran Affairs, right?
Yeah.
Under the Mara Driscoll.
The Mara
Driscoll administration. And, it's just a lot of different changes going on. I just want to say, welcome to Boston Black News. I'm so glad to see you. No, seriously.
No, I'm so glad to be here this morning. I just want to say good morning to all of you, to both of you, and to everyone listening. It's been a really intense 4 months.
Right.
I always say to people, it's been 4 months, 4 weeks, and 4 days.
Okay.
And I've counted every single one because you feel every single one.
Well,
it's been very interesting.
Well, so we're going to tell you do it in 4 minutes.
Yes. No, we're going to do it.
Okay, no.
And thank you for the opportunity.
Yes.
One of the things I was actually talking to yesterday to a group of people is how important radio is to the Black community.
Right.
And we should be consistently, as elected officials, not only like posting online, sending newsletters, creating forums, but we should actually have television shows and radio shows or go on them.
Right.
Because our people are listening. And so it's important to come in and say, hey, let me give you a little update of what's happened in the first 100 days.
Right.
And then share where I'm thinking we're going in the next 100 days.
Right.
Before the summer.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Pastor Wall, who founded Boston Praise Radio and TV and Boston Black News, has been doing this forever. Like he's a pioneer, right? And one of the reasons I came on board was the fact that I was tired of seeing folks who don't look like us giving news, and because folks trust us to tell them what's going on in our communities is so effective. So I'm glad you mentioned that because
and
it's so important.
I think we need to do more for Black radio. I mean, they low-powered radio stations struggle to get the funds and resources and to move out of regulatory issues so that they can actually do what they want to do. But I'm really excited also. Think about it, the Bay State Banner.
Yeah.
After 40-plus years exchanging hands from the Miller family to someone like Ron Mitchell that's a veteran, still in media, I'm excited to see where that goes beyond print. You know, news needs to come more than just on a piece of paper.
Right.
And so I'm excited to see what he does and his team with our beloved Bay State Banner, just like Praise Radio, like making sure that it's great, not just good, but like, does Past the Wall have everything he needs?
We're gonna make sure we'll talk about that afterwards. But anyway, so let's talk about our first 100 days. I remember Dr. Carolyn Crockett was on the broadcast a couple of weeks ago, and she reminded me because I kept wondering where do I know Liz Miranda from? Because first I thought the Tobin, then I thought Boston Do Something, then I thought My Town,
maybe Dunk the Vote.
Dunk the Vote. And I was like, I know her because I remember when you were younger. And I was like, wait a second. And she reminded me you was giving the tours.
Yes.
And I had just left the Mission Hill Community Centers, Boston, and I became the director of Boston Do Something, which was
a lot of my friends were part of Boston Do Something.
The board.
Shauna. And Hearn.
See, y'all are dating me now. Okay. But so let's talk about it. Yeah.
So one, I think I'd be remiss if I don't talk about, the loss of Melvin H. King, right?
Yes.
I was fortunate enough to have a mentor like Carolyn Crockett, who met me on Dudley Street as a student from Yale working at DSNI. So many of our leaders either came out of that community organizing and youth organizing, and she said she was going back to school and thinking of something, but she also believed and loved Mel and learned a lot from his organizing work, stopping the highway, building Tent City, and being at MIT and being an elected official. A lot of people don't know that he was a state rep for over 10 years in the same district that had Byron Russian, Dr. Santiago, and now we'll have John Moran because there isn't competition. And I got to meet him and know him and love him, and I just think it's been a profound loss. And I hope that we as leaders, not just political leaders, but leaders in every sector, learn about his unifying message, focus on the people, and hopefully work together across sectors to solve the most pertinent problems we have. The other thing is Carolyn Crockett is also a treasure.
She's incredible.
She's changed my life. I was talking to Kevin Peterson the other day, like my first 4 jobs, I remember them vividly. One, registering people to vote with Kevin, doing stuff at My Town and in the South End where there was lots of youth programming at the time, and then working at DSNI and OP. Those 4 jobs really changed the way that I looked at myself and the way that I looked at my community. So the last...
Well, can I just interrupt? Wait a second. You know what? So you got the organizing guru, right?
It's in my heart.
It's in your DNA because, when you was running for office, I have to say that was a good campaign.
Thank you.
And it was horrible. It was a horrible day on election day, right?
For some people.
For some people. No, I'm just saying as far as like the weather. And leading a couple of days leading up because of the transportation. The transportation with the T stations. It was just really brutal. But I seen you everywhere. I was like, that. See, I say that's an organizer.
Well, I also think that I must say this. I had a lot of respect for the people I was running against. They throw their name in the hat. They build their agenda. And people, loved all of us, but loved us all differently. And so for me, I stayed ready and prepared because I knew that they were going to bring their A game. So I had to bring my A+ game.
You had to put your head
in the rain, and it was like crisscrossing the district. A lot of people don't know the 2nd Suffolk includes now parts of Hyde Park all the way to the South End. It's much less JP than it was in the past, and it's much less South End than it was in the past. But we now have the Blue Halav corridor all together, which is super important because it's had 2 senators and multiple reps for way too long. And this is one of my pet peeves, is that Blue Halav, to me, if it gets the investment and the attention it needs, I think all of us in the Second Suffolk would do better. So
Yes.
let me give you a couple
Okay,
of highlights.
good.
But I had to do that because none
yeah.
of us get to where we're going alone.
Right.
And I want to share that again.
And we want to talk about the intergenerational disconnect that we can connect so that we could be better for all
Yeah,
folks.
we need to do that.
Yeah.
And we need to handle it soon. So
Yeah. Mhm.
I got inaugurated in January.
Right.
Had a big community inaugural celebration. That same month, we file our bills.
Right.
So I filed 75 bills, and I'm co-leading on 20 more. The bills are in every part of society, but I think the top four: health equity, economic opportunity and mobility,
Okay.
education, and then the criminal legal system. And we'll talk a little bit later why I've decided to focus on these four areas, but there's bills on everything from housing
Oh, yeah.
to transportation and beyond. Secured $31 million already
Okay.
for the youth jobs. I do believe that most of what I work on is directly related to the experience of growing up in the city of Boston
Okay.
and growing up in a community that went through so much and realizing, if we want to solve gun violence, it's not just gun laws,
That's
right?
right.
It's youth opportunity. And so super excited with the young people that came from across the state to do that, $31 million. I'm on Ways and Means. So for the folks that don't know what that is, that's the money committee.
That's right.
And I'm on the joint committee of Ways and Means. I've got to host a hearing
Okay.
where hundreds of people testified. I crisscrossed the state to hear from people. What do they want us to spend our money on? So the governor released her budget, the House released their budget, then the Senate released our budget, and the House just went through their budget deliberations, and the Senate will be doing that in May. And that's very important for the folks who are listening. If you want us to do things differently out of this $56 billion budget.
Okay.
And let me make it very clear. $56 billion is just...
That's with a B, by the way.
B.
For listeners out there.
Billion.
Yeah, okay.
Is the pot of money that the executive branch, her secretariats, her cabinet, and the legislature spends their money on. But there's billions of other dollars beyond this one budget. And,
Right.
and make no mistake, Black communities have never gotten their fair share. Third is we got our committees. And so I mentioned being on Ways and Means, and I'm on 5 other committees, but I'm chairing racial equity, civil rights, and inclusion. And I really hope that committee, I'm doing that with Rep. Bud Williams
Okay.
out of Springfield.
Springfield, right.
And we're going to have a very busy year holding our, like a mirror
Right.
to state government, not just the legislature, but the entire state government about what they're doing about racial equity. Right now, if you've listened to the news, there's this complicated conversation happening around taxes
Yes.
and tax packages and tax relief. And we will be doing that in June. The House also did that.
Right.
But the whole point is that we, in my belief, can't keep giving tax breaks to the wealthy.
Right.
There's overconcentration of wealth in white communities and white families. And we want to make sure that we are giving tax breaks to families.
Right.
And to elders and to communities that really need it. And one of the taxes that I'm really supporting is the brownfields tax.
Okay.
And so people say, well, what the hell is brownfields tax? And why do you care so much about the environment? And I tell people all the time, because it's making us sick and we're dying.
Right.
Right? When you think about our communities, they were done by design, redlining.
Right.
Talk about brownfields is because most of our land is polluted.
Yeah.
When you think about Blue Halav, the reason why there's so many vacant lots
Right.
is because actually there's lead in the
Lead in the
soil.
soil, yeah.
Some people burn homes. Some people took their companies and put all the stuff underground.
Right.
The greatest correlation to toxicity is race. So
Right.
Blacker communities have poorer health outcomes. And the last two things that I think are really important to know about the first 100 days, I hosted the president of Cape Verde.
Okay.
And, I'm Cape Verdean and
Right.
really proud of that. But more importantly, he was the first visitor to the Healy Driscoll administration, and he's African.
Right.
The Black community in Boston is not a monolith.
Come on now. Right.
We represent many different countries, the Caribbean, Haiti, the Dominican Republic. We think about Cape Verde, but there's also a huge population of Nigerians and Ghanaians and Somalians
Right.
and Ethiopians. And so what's important for me is that I lead from a place of love
Right.
and lead from a place that says everyone belongs.
Right.
Everyone belongs. And so that visit was very important Verdean.
Yeah.
Cape Verdeans have been connected to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for well over 200 years.
Mm-hmm.
And black people, I just want to tell you, we've been here since
I like the way you say
1637.
black. That's
Black,
right. That's
you know.
right. Come
I
on
think
now.
because sometimes people want to debate whether I'm black or not, and
Yeah.
it just needs to stop.
Stop it.
You know, I've been
Right.
black my whole life.
Right.
You know, the idea that, you know, I'm not because I'm fair skinned
Right.
or because I represent a different ethnicity is not true.
Right.
You know, you don't say Mel King's not black because he's Guyanese
Right.
and Bayesian. You don't say someone's not black because their ethnicity comes from a different place.
Right.
When communities get here, whether it's through the historical slave trade that many of our families came up from South Carolina, Alabama, or whether
Right.
they came from the coast of Africa, which had the slave trade since the 1400s.
Right.
When we get here, our destinies are tied.
That's right.
Our destinies are tied, and it's super important that I share that because yes, I am
We're
proud.
going to go back to that.
Yeah,
one,
'cause that's a big thing.
That's a big thing.
It's a big thing in our communities, and that's how it's how we are divided.
That's how we're divided. You know, I could tell you from Boston, right?
Yeah.
Because you know the story, right?
Yeah.
And it is so important that we talk about the story because so often what you just said is not said out loud. It's said in silos, and what happens is that folks get into their little corners, and then it is used against us, and that's why we're in the position we're in. You know, for someone who was born in Boston, grew up in Boston, and I see the changes that are going on, it is very disappointing. But there is opportunity. So when I'm listening to you, it's refreshing for me because the next generation is going to carry that torch along with the elder generation.
It is.
Because it's not just, our future leaders, these are future. No. Let's not disrespect or disregard what has been done.
Yeah, because we, like I said, we don't get anywhere alone.
Right.
But the other thing is for someone like me,
Right.
I'm not a baby. I'm 42 years old,
Right.
so I'm a whole adult, right? And I think sometimes folks also make it seem like I'm 25.
Right.
But the idea is that we stand on shoulders of people who've paved the way.
Right.
Like there would be no Liz Miranda without a Senator Wilkerson.
Right.
There would be no Liz Miranda without a Representative Marie St. Fleur
Right.
or Charlotte Gola-Ritchie. And we have to make sure that we're remembering
There you go.
and building at the same time.
Right.
Yesterday I was somewhere, and I just want to share a quote, and it's really deep. You know, people ask me all the time, like, how do I have hope? You know, and I say that there is this pendulum between despair and hope that Black people understand in this city.
Right.
And the reason we go through these things is that Boston and Massachusetts doesn't like to tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'll think about something like I was a Black history major, and I studied under some really important people, Dr. Vandermeer at UMass.
Oh, yeah, Tony.
Shout out to them, and Jemadari, Dr. Kamara, but also Tony Martin, who was at Wellesley. And he was a Garveyite. And he did a lot to teach us as Black women from all different corners of the world, different economic statuses, that the true power in our educational achievement will be understanding of self and understanding of community. And in that, I learned that, you know, we've gone through a whole lot in this country. We've gone a whole lot when they stole us and brought us to this country. But there's this notion of Black people who've been fighting over time who still had hope. They saw that the work they were doing was not for their generation or even the next generation, but generations 3, 4, 5 generations ahead. And I'll give an example. I'm a Delta. You know, very proud to be a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
Well, I played Troop Sci Phi.
Okay.
Me find me.
Me find me. You were GDI in the way that we like to talk about it.
My first year of college, I went to Cheney State
Oh,
University
Cheney.
in Pennsylvania, right?
HBCU.
Philly. Right. And what happened was folks were trying to get me to pledge. And, you know, being on the basketball team, we said
Yes.
Hoop Sci-Fi, but it got to a point, it's like, no, I'm doing my own thing. But
I
anyway,
never heard that, so we should use that more often. Hoop Sci-Fi.
Hoop Sci-Fi.
But, you know, Deltas in 1913
Right.
walked in the suffrage march that gave white women the right to vote.
Right.
They didn't give them the right to vote. They wouldn't get the right to vote till 45 years later.
Right.
But they knew that what they were doing was disruption.
Right.
And that they were preparing a plate for us.
Exactly.
You know, that it would come to the civil rights movement. We finally would get the right to vote again for Black men, and then finally for Black women. But it wasn't without a fight. And so I'm coming to you with a couple, you know, tidbits on what has happened in the first 100 days. But I want folks to know a couple of very important things. One, I want to shout out my staff.
Okay.
I have been only working with 3 people, and in the Senate you get 5 or 6. And we're just hiring the 4th and 5th person like next week.
Oh,
And so
wow.
we've done a lot of this work with them. So shouts out to Kevin, Malia, and Rochelle because it's been hard.
Right.
We're also moving our offices. So we'll be in 519.
Okay.
The People's House, the State House. If anyone wants to come visit, we'd love to have you.
Right.
I also have a district office on 492 Dudley Street, and we're going to keep that for a couple more months. But
That's
we
good.
It is. I've had a district office
I
for
didn't
3
know.
years.
Okay.
And people come there all the time because they don't want to go to the State House. But we're soon going to be thinking about being in Mattapan.
Okay.
And it's very important for me and my team to be in different locations because everybody knows me on Dudley Street.
That's right.
We've done
You
the
got
work.
that.
I grew up there.
That's right.
But it's important to be somewhere that is faced with a lot of challenges. And being in Mattapan Square is really important because of what's going to be happening with Mattapan
Right.
in the next few years, but also because of the Haitian migrant situation.
Right.
People are being dropped off every day, everywhere across the state, and we've got to do a better job of resettling
Right.
our Haitian brothers and sisters. And I think if we're in Mattapan, along with, I'm not going to share which city council I'm going to work with, but people should know based on
Of
my
course, we
relationships
know.
with the closest people,
Right.
that we hope to serve the people in community and making sure that we have a presence and maybe in a neighborhood that doesn't have the presence that they need.
Right. Well, one of the things that you were scheduled to come on a couple of weeks ago, and I had an incident and I couldn't make it. And then the following week, you was determined to get back in here, which is really good. I really appreciate that. And you were going to call from one of the House of Corrections.
Yes.
And I was like, that's important work. I want you to come in the studio when you're available. Just talk about the work that you're doing with brothers and sisters behind the wall.
You know what I'm really thankful of? Sometimes you don't see blessings in disguise necessarily. And so I want to thank, my brothers, my father, my birth father, because through their pain of being incarcerated and my father and brother being deported and losing a brother to gun violence, I've done a lot through them and for them. And because of that, I also was passionate about other people that are incarcerated. And I just want to share a win that we got this week that I think is super important because it's unique. So last year, we passed a bill called the Jail-Based Voting Bill, which essentially returned access to the ballot box for 8,000 to 10,000 incarcerated people, pretrial detention, and those serving a misdemeanor. Well, we couldn't stop there, and so the Democracy Behind Bars Coalition, which includes many brothers behind the wall at Norfolk, and that's where I was at Norfolk, meeting with the brothers of the AACC.
Okay.
We wanted to further a bill on felony enfranchisement, which is important for our communities to understand this. We could vote if we were incarcerated with a felony conviction up until 20 years ago.
Right.
And then a Republican governor, because they were organizing in the jails in a way that gave them such a voice and so
They put
power,
me out.
They were
put
doing
me
that
out.
work. They were?
They put me
They didn't
out.
put you out. They did.
They put me out. They put me out.
Put you out of business?
No,
because
let me
they
tell
were
you,
so
I was
good?
organizing in the jails with Ani King. It was just coming together. It was this group. And I used to go up there, and it was not a good experience for me. They said, when I used to walk through the yard, and then one day they said to me, you are no longer allowed up here. Because what I was doing was not only organizing the brothers, but organizing people that they were related to outside of the wall.
And it's important. I want to let people know the people behind the wall are not throwaway people.
Right.
They actually are brilliant and they're organizing. And so we just passed out of committee a constitutional amendment to amend the Constitution of Massachusetts to return the right to vote for 5,000 folks serving time. And for folks that are listening, they're like, why should we care? We should care because 58% of the incarcerated population in Massachusetts in the DOC system in our 15 jails are black and brown.
Right.
Yet we only make 18% of the state's population.
That's right.
So we're 3 times more likely to be incarcerated than to be represented in sort of the census blocks across the state.
And that comes with money.
Yes.
Okay, so folks know.
We spend
Come on
about
now.
$100,000 a year
Right.
incarcerating black and brown people, particularly black and brown young men. There's some statistics, for example, life without parole.
Mm-hmm.
We are tied with Louisiana. We're number 1 in the nation for the percentage of people serving life without parole. Currently in our jails, 1 in 5 people are serving life without parole. Now, if I didn't dig deep, I'd be like, well, they did something bad, and most people would say they belong there.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, it's because we over-sentence
Right.
black people 8 times the rate of white people for the same crime.
Right.
And when you have people that you're sentencing to die, where's the rehabilitation?
Right.
Why is it called the Department of Correction if you're just sentencing people to die? It should be the Department of Death.
Right.
Because we're sending young people, in many cases, 18, 19, 20, 21, with joint venture crimes
Right.
to jail to die. In some cases, when they go to jail, right, the people that are their co-defendants who pled guilty sometimes are out
Right.
while they fought their crimes because they're... So the work I'm doing in the jails is not by myself.
Right.
Rep Holmes goes consistently once a month. You have Rep Roral, who took the 5th Suffolk, who has gone to visit at least 3 jails since he's been in office the last 4 months. We are growing because your elected official, regardless of where you live in Massachusetts, has the privilege to visit any state institution
Anytime they want.
for any reason.
Right.
And you know what you're talking about, that retaliation?
Right.
You did a good thing. The bad thing was that the governor succeeded in making it seem like you couldn't do that work.
Right.
And the brothers behind the wall couldn't do that work. But it only was because of fear.
Right.
It was out of fear
Right.
because the brothers started a pact.
Right.
Do you remember?
Oh,
They
yeah, I
started a
remember.
pact.
Oh, I know.
You know, they were going to get us elected. So
Well, I want to work with you on that.
Thank
I want
you.
to talk.
I would
more.
love to.
Yeah, because that is my passion. And I was just cut off. And it was like when I started Dunk the Vote, 1992. It was like folks were like, I was the only one. Folks were looking at me like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Do you understand what's going on?" So it's really important that we focus on the population behind the wall because they're our people.
there are people and there are families.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've visited now 11 out of the 15 facilities. So I have 4 more to go to be the only elected official that's visited all the DOC facilities. I've met with 350 people. But you want to know what the beautiful thing is? Out of those 350 people, like half a dozen to a dozen have been released, either through the work around wrongful convictions,
Right.
whether it was the Criminal Justice Reform Act that downgraded juvenile litigants so that they would not be charged with adult crimes, and so many of them have served their sentence and are out now after 20 years.
Right.
And so the beautiful thing, and they helped me.
Right.
You know, the other shout I want to give is to Rep. Nika Lugardo, because
Yeah.
both her and me, we did things differently, but we still engaged with a lot of incarcerated people.
Right.
And they helped us in
Right.
our races.
Right.
They were calling their families. Some of them, you talk about being in the rain, shout out to
Right.
David.
Yeah.
David served 20 years.
Yep.
In Concord, and he was like one of my best door knockers. He was outside.
They did work,
trying
man.
They work. And so I'll come back and talk about that because I think our communities, I know our communities need to really work on celebrating those brothers and sisters, but also helping them.
Right.
Because if we on the outside are more vocal, their experiences on the inside will be better.
Right. I want to circle back on what you had mentioned as far as the first 100 days, ways and means. And one of the things we're doing here at Boston Black News is to really educate our people. What is ways and means? What is a line item? What is, the secretaries? Because folks don't know.
Yeah.
I remember when I worked for Governor Patrick, folks would ask me how much it costs to come in the State House. how much it costs.
Yeah, because they don't know,
They
because
really
we
don't
haven't
know.
been allowed or promoted to be there.
Right.
But I want everyone to know there are 200 legislators, and we'll be doing some videos, because what we heard from people was those exact same things. Like, what's the difference between a rep and a senator?
Right.
Then some people would come
Or a
to
state
us.
senator and a
A
U.S. senator.
A lot of people think I was in D.C. I was like, nah,
Right.
I'm right here up the
Right.
street.
Right.
But folks told us to do it differently, to do radio, to do reels, to
Yeah.
do podcasts, to do
Right.
little videos to explain how
Good.
a bill becomes a law.
Right.
But I just want to quickly go over, and I shared this every time I've been here, but I think
Okay.
it's important. Your elected officials, particularly in the state level, do four main things. Pass laws, amend laws. The second thing, take a piece of the state budget and redistribute it, or push folks to distribute it equally or equitably across the state.
Right.
The third is constituent services. We help
Right.
people.
Right.
And in my case, we take federal stuff, we take city stuff, and we just get it to people. Because the majority of my job is getting people to do their job.
Right.
Right. And the last thing, which is the most important thing, people are like, well, why do you say that? Because it should be laws and money. I was like, yeah, it's laws and money and constituent services, but it's the championing of causes.
That's right.
Because when we elevate something in our platform, like, for example, I work a lot in maternal health. Black women are dying.
Right.
Our babies are dying. 4 years ago, we weren't having this conversation, but because Black women like myself, Black women like Rep. Tyler, Black women like Rep. Brandy Fluker Oakley definitely said, hey, nothing for us without us.
Right.
We elevated that conversation, and now maternal health and Black maternal health is in everybody's mouth.
Right.
But that championing of causes, whether it's gun violence, whether it's voting rights,
Right.
whether it's poverty alleviation, whether it's education, we have a huge platform, not only outside the buildings, but in that building, to be able to say, we don't speak for all Black people. We're not a
Right.
monolith.
Right.
But we speak for a majority of Black people when we say that we've earned this piece of this pie.
Right.
You're not giving us a handout.
That's right.
This is our money too.
All right.
This is our state house too. And so I'll be back to talk about the carceral system here in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Because I think people need to learn the truth.
Right.
And the statistics are actually worse than I thought. When I used to visit the jails, I went for my brother, and then I went for other people that folks would say, hey, can you visit my dad?
Right.
Can you visit my brother? Can you visit this person, my spouse? And then what I learned is that the conditions were far worse than I'd ever imagined.
Right.
So thank you for asking me about those things.
Yeah, well, thank you for being a guest on Boston Black News, because it's like rejuvenating for me to hear this. Someone from Boston, someone who really is passionate about doing things and getting things done. Thank you so much. You have final words for our audience?
I just want to say three things about myself. I'm teachable, and I'm reachable. And those are the two most important things I want folks to listen. Like, I'm not perfect.
Right.
I don't know everything. And I'm looking forward to meeting people in my district who want to help further the agenda. And I hope that the people that weren't with me in this race, and the people maybe who don't like me or have an issue with me, got some smoke,
Right.
that they can come around to understand that we can still do good work together. We don't need to be best friends to be able to get this agenda across the finish line.
Right.
And the last thing I want to say to folks is that everything is political.
Right.
And so as you're listening to radio, you're watching Facebook, and you're trying to figure out, well, why should I care? Why should I be involved? Know that all of our lives are dictated between the decisions that are done at the federal level and at the state level. And we desperately need our communities to be more vocal. And so I welcome that. I'm not afraid of smoke. But, what I am afraid of is not hearing from people.
Right.
And I want folks to know that I have an open door policy.
Right.
And I'm looking forward to representing in this big tent everybody.
And you from here?
Yeah, I'm from
That's
here,
right.
Dudley
You
Street,
from-
02119. You know what I mean? I went to OB. And I see the phones blaring. I hear y'all. I see y'all. I got to go do it live. I feel bad. I'm like,
Okay.
Pastor Wall, should I do a question? It feels like, I got 2 more minutes in here. So
Well, I mean, are there calls coming in? We don't. Okay. Well, you know what? We're going to be right back. State Senator Liz Miranda. We'll be right back.
all right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
spider web of lies. Isn't this America? Or is this America all a lie?
Of the freedom of speech, somewhere I read. Of the freedom of press, somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
How can I pledge allegiance to a country built on lies? Or raise my children to believe they're equal in its eyes? My leaders are assassinated for speaking their mind. So justice never tilts my way. I thought that she was blind. Isn't this America? Or is this America all a lie?
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop.
Looking in the rearview mirror, terrified by lights, waiting for these paper laws to play out in my life. But now I lay awaiting death, staring in the sky, killed by those sworn to protect me. What a way to die. Isn't this America? Or is this America all a lie?
Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm back. This is WBPG-LP 102.9 FM at the Round Table with Denise DePina Reed and Dr. Willie Bradley and Jeff Durham and Reverend Pastor Hobbs. I'm laughing here. Good morning, everyone.
Hey, Dennis, how you doing, man? It's Dennis.
I am, but at least I have a reason to.
Yeah, I hear you. I really don't have a reason for it, but it's nice to be back. We're on our second hour of the broadcast. Within upon the half hour mark, we're going to have the mayor of Boston come in and be a guest on the show. But until then, we can continue our conversation that we were talking about previously. Yes, sorry, go on.
No, I'm going to explain. Last night we had our testimonial for retired Superintendent William Billy Celester. We had a good time last night. He was extremely pleased, and so were we. We had a good night, and I'm dragging this morning, but I don't know what your excuse is.
Well, my excuse was my wife worked last night, so I had to be Mr. Mom and Dad. You know what I mean? So I was kind of, and I take my hat off to those sisters who are serving in both capacities. You know what I mean? Because it's not easy. But when you're, doing things around the house and you get, hey, Dad, what's for dinner? It's like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Leftovers, I guess.
Did you make smothered pork chops and come in here with none?
No, I didn't. I did not do that. We had leftovers, but I'm just tired. My wife worked, and I had to take on both of those tasks, and it wasn't easy. So I do take my hat off to those sisters who and fathers and brothers who are single parents, because it is not an easy task.
It was a well-attended event.
Yes, it was. It was.
Yeah.
Was able to.
I can't hear you on my mic.
acknowledge the Soul Patrol.
Okay.
The members of the Soul Patrol, as they receive their acknowledgement. A retired brother firefighter,
William Pudgy Hicks.
who did heroic things within the Boston community, and what made it more special is that there was a live feed from Minister Farrakhan.
Oh, okay.
Giving acknowledgement to Billy and his accomplishments and the MAP accomplishment, and the call to action and calling more people to the table. So those who may have missed the broadcast, we Facebook Live the broadcast. So all you have to do is look in the video section of Mamlio's Facebook page, and you can view the entire event. I had a wonderful time. Wonderful time. Well done, Preston. Salute, sir. You definitely know how to throw a party.
Well, I'm sorry I missed it. Hopefully, by the grace of God, the next one come around, I'll be able to attend. But Mama had to work, and I tend not to go to things like that without wife. So, but that's just my personal take on it. But I'm sorry I had to miss it.
Hopefully, the next one they'll salute us.
Well, we're still waiting.
Well, you know what? Yeah, I hear you. But the way things are going, we have to continue to work. So what we're doing is a continuation of what Billy and those individuals started back in the 60s. But the way things are going today, I personally think there's a concerted effort at areas in government to ensure that Mamlio is not as vibrant as it is today through the lack of membership. Because the things that were allowed to happen when I came on the force and when you came on, we no longer do at Mamlio. Like I got a conversation from John Wells when I came on back in the 80s about becoming a member of Mamlio. I talked about that on this broadcast. That doesn't happen today. So I think there's an effort to prevent Mamlio from being a voice in the community through attrition.
It was good to have them talk. And Billy, as he said last week, he talked about the things that happened when they came on. The reason that they came on is why we're here today. It was good to celebrate them. It was good to salute them, because without them, you and I wouldn't be here. And so the Laura Howards, the Millie Gardners, Tom Mila, that consent decree, that allowed us to be here. I came on in
86, right?
No, I came on in 1985. Larry Ellison and I are classmates. And
I came on in 1988.
I did 32 years. And when I think back, I don't look upon that lightly.
It's a large part of your life, you know what I mean?
It was.
You dedicated that.
Those people are very much a reason. Lisa Holmes was 3 months ahead of me. Lisa said just a few words to me that allowed me to go back and get my bachelor's degree. I have a thing about, somebody said once, you make it going up, you send the elevator back down to allow somebody else to make it back up. Those people allowed us to get on this job. Those people said a few things. They guided us in order for us to make it. So, I say thank you.
Yeah.
I say thank you. I remember Billy. I remember him being commander of B2. I didn't work B2. I've been everywhere else but B2, but I remember him being the commander of B2. So I just say thank you.
Well, I
was glad that we were able to as my mama used to say, give me my flowers now while I can smell them.
I hear you. Well, we were, he was a commander of B2 when I came on, because when I came on the force, there was a large contingent of officers of color in my particular class, and I was the only one of those officers who did not get assigned to B2. my mother and my sister prayed. They didn't want me there. They wanted me in another. I ended up going to 11 and ultimately to South Boston, which was probably one of the worst assignments that I had as a police officer. But nevertheless, I was a cop and I did my job. But my point here is that Billy Sylvester, and I said it on the show and I said it again, and unfortunately I was not there last night, but that doesn't mean my heart wasn't there. Billy Sylvester was the reason why I became a police officer, period, point blank. Because at the time, I was toying with the idea. And also, you have to remember now, at the time, I was a registered stockbroker. I was a registered stockbroker, registered to trade securities on the New York Stock Exchange. I had no interest of becoming a police officer. But one day, I was at the Kite Festival, and I saw Billy Sylvester walking around with all these stars on his shoulder. And I said, you know what? This guy here, man, look at this dude. You know, he's gleaming, you know, and he's a black. I can do this. And at that point, I decided I was going to become a police officer. And I ended up becoming a deputy superintendent and had the same stars. And I hope that I made the impression on someone else as Billy made on me. But he is really the reason. I mentioned this story several times. And because of that, then I get in on and I understood, beginning to understand the fight that he had to go through to become a deputy superintendent or a superintendent and the issues that were actually plaguing the police department around diversity, and I realized that it was no different than any other thing that I was in. I had the same issue when I was in Wall Street. We had very few black stockbrokers, and in fact, I was the only black stockbroker registered in the member of the Traders Association, which is the union for traders, stock traders here, on Wall Street, and so. You talking about a business that was started back in the 1850s and never had a person of color as a member of that association in Boston, So the same issues, and I say that because the same issues I was facing in the financial industry, I faced in law enforcement.
Well, they sent me to D4. There wasn't that many of us down in D4. And now I'm vice president of MAMLEO, and I fight for MAMLEO, but it's not easy.
No, it's not easy because
it's not easy.
But you see what they're trying to do, though.
Yeah.
They're trying to limit MAMLEO's voice, and I'm speaking to the young officers, because you know what? If they don't allow us to go to the academy to speak to our officers of color about becoming a member of this association, well, we have a platform right here. And I know officers are listening to this broadcast. If you are not a member of MAMLEO, you should walk down to 61 Columbia Road and become a member very, very quickly. Because at some point in your career, you will need that association. It's too late to come to MAMLEO once, the stuff get into your face, once it hit the fan. Because by being a member of the association, a member of the Boston Police Department, and you're a person of color, the stuff will hit the fan. There's no question about it.
As Larry always says,
it's a matter of time.
You will get a turn.
That's right.
Everybody gets a turn.
So what we get often, people come in and they start asking questions of what can you do to help me, but where were you before, the clouds came over your career and it started to rain on your career? Where were you when it was all sunshine? So if you're having a good time now, you got the assignment, you're working on the force, you should come to 61 Columbia Road and sign up as a member, a dues-paying member of the association. Don't let this association die because of what you're hearing about fairness among your white colleagues. It doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? It does not work that way. So please become a member.
We are having people from outside. We are having people from Lawrence. We're having people from Brockton. We're having people from outside of this city contact us with the same issues that are going on in this city. So do not get complacent. Don't let this great organization. We will be 50 years old in 2018. Okay.
Yeah.
And we're still dealing with the
same stuff.
issues.
And so what make younger officers who are coming on the force saying, all these people are doing is that this is a racist broadcast. I have heard this. Yeah. This is a racist broadcast. All you talk about is hatred. No, we're not. If I'm telling you that you're treating me wrongly because of the color of my skin doesn't mean that I'm telling you that I hate you. I'm identifying your behavior that is wrong. So to tell me that this is a racist broadcast, no, it's not a racist broadcast. It's a broadcast that's protesting the status quo. The status quo itself is racist, not the broadcast.
Leslie Epps says, "Good morning, Ma'am Leo. We have to be the change that is so greatly needed to bring about system that is voided of corruption and justice. Continue to stand for what is right and true, even if it means standing alone. Change starts with self." We have a caller.
We have a caller? Well, I have something in the chat room. I'd read it after we get to after the caller.
Good morning, folks.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm well. I'm well.
I was
Mr.
listening.
President.
Happy birthday, President.
Thank you. Thank
you know what, Larry? I would try to sing it to you, but man, listen, you don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear that.
Ema Arrington did a great job last night.
I hear
you guys wouldn't even come close. So.
Okay, I hear you.
I felt like JFK when Marilyn Monroe. But I think last night was long overdue for people such as Billy and Preston, who continues to do the work and not looking for any acknowledgement, but looking to make sure that there is adequate protection and access for all police officers. It's sad that I didn't see anyone in there presently from the command staff. A lot of us came on under Billy's tutelage when he was the commander at Area B, and for nothing else, to say thank you for what you did. Whether or not we are in disagreement about issues today, folks should have stopped by and acknowledged the Soul Patrol, Billy Sylvester. It just shows there's no independence on their part to come in there without permission, and that's really sad. It speaks very loudly about how divisive it's become, because folks will look out for themselves, and the rest of us will suffer for that. And these folks, if you listen to their stories last night, made the ultimate sacrifices and giving up things so that those of us who were coming behind had access. I mean, Billy and John Wells gave up sergeant's rights because it wasn't going to benefit the bulk of us, and decided to go into court and fight, the injustice. And you said a great job by the committee that put it together last night. It was well attended, and I think the message hit home with a lot of people. It was good to see a lot of young officers in there because they don't know the history, and when they hear Ma'am Leo speaking in the terms that we do, it's because we do understand the history of that organization.
Well, Larry, and unfortunately, I could not make it last night, but my heart was there. But the thing is that you got a chance to tell our story, not his story. You know what I mean? Right. Our story as it relates to, how Ma'am Leo got started and why it was started, and what were the sequence of events that took place to bring Ma'am Leo to where it is today, and why is it so important to keep Ma'am Leo a very active and vibrant part of our community. So
well, Dr. Bradley, some of the things that Billy Sylvester talked about last night, if you close your eyes, and Denise and Jeff can probably contest to it, you think you were talking about BPD today. It's just people have become a little bit more covert. They can't publicly call you some of the things that Billy and them were, and they can't publicly tell people to stay away from them. But the issues are very similar to today. And then the difference is that they were united, and because they didn't include any of us back then, and they know today they have to symbolically reach out and have some of us as part of the team.
Right.
But, back then, it was so overt that you had no choice but to be part of them, because you were not allowed to be part of the other group. And to hear that there were some officers, white officers, who stood up and stood in solidarity with those folks, and Mickey Roach being one of them. I commend, because people don't understand this struggle is not just with black officers, K Radio. It's all of us saying this will not be tolerated.
Well, it sounded like you were saying, it was the same clown but a different mask. Pretty much. It's
exactly.
the same clown but a different mask. Exactly. But again, I think that, and we were talking earlier, Mr. President, that the police department is trying to limit Mamleo or weaken Mamleo through attrition. Hoping that we all retire that are members, and then preventing Mamleo from recruiting officers of black officers to younger officers into the association. So I'm happy to hear that we had some young officers there who are listening to that history.
Yeah, and they were listening intensely and with their mouths open and dropped, because I think people quickly forget what is really going on in real time. When folks are saying we got to make America great again, right? We know what that. I mean, when the song of the Mamleo song comes on, America be true to the words. People just listen to the song, but if you listen to the words, what he's talking about, when you're talking about all men are created equal, and I mean all men and women, people are created equal. That's what's saying. Be true to your words. Be true to your words.
And that's not, and we were talking earlier about discrimination and segregation, and being true to your word doesn't mean that you would segregate me because of the pigmentation of my skin.
Right.
It doesn't mean that, because I have more of the hygiene, the gene for color, melatonin, in my skin than anyone else, doesn't mean that you're going to, deny me access to mainstream America. That means that, I'm going to police all people equally and fairly.
Right.
I am going to provide public works services to all people equally and fairly. That's what we're talking about. And also, and I think that young officers who are coming on the job, and very few officers of color are coming on, by the way, because you look at the composition of the class, of the recruit class, it's abysmal.